What is different about the Tennessee Titans under Mike McCoy compared to the team under Brian Callahan? We have a one-game sample size to dissect, Justin, but we're not just going to talk about what we saw on the field. We might speculate a little about what's different behind the scenes as well. This is the Music City Audible. Let's get to it. Welcome everyone to another episode of the Music City Audible podcast presented by Sinkers Beverages, the premier wine, spirits, and beer store in East Nashville in partnership with 440 Sports. I'm Justin Graver. With me, as always, Justin Melo. Justin, we're back here. Week 8 Tuesday is how I label our podcasts throughout the week, and we're going to get into what we believe, what we observe, and what we believe are different about this Tennessee Titans in the Mike McCoy era, which might not be very long, but it is going to be this season. How's it going?
Well, I'm doing well. It's going to be at least half the season, the Mike McCoy era, so we've got to evaluate it and assess it. Before we get into the changes, though, quickly hit on a newser that we missed yesterday. Tyler Lockett requested and was granted his release from the team. I have no idea how the offense is going to function without him now. Sorry, I think he had 9 catches for 70 yards on the year. Look, I'm trying to be nice, in all honesty, because I do think Tyler Lockett is a great guy, phenomenal person to have in the locker room. But as far as washed receivers go in Titans history, and there's been a lot of them, he's on the Mount Rushmore at least. If he's not the biggest face on the Mount Rushmore, they have different size faces. I don't know if they've got different size faces, but if they did, Tyler Lockett's might have been the biggest on the Titans version of washed receivers, Mount Rushmore. I said this to you in a message.
This is the Canadian in you. If you were American, you'd know the Mount Rushmore faces are.
What I do know as a Canadian is the Toronto Blue Jays are going to the World Series. Eat your heart out. Seattle Mariners, New York Yankees, take a back seat. That's what I'm excited about. Trying to get tickets this morning. Couldn't get tickets, shockingly. Toronto tickets are outrageous. I think right now they're being resold for like $5,000 a piece. Last I saw. But Tyler Lockett requests and granted his release. I said this to you in a message yesterday, and I couldn't. You were surprised by it, so I think others will. It wasn't the first week that Chimere Dike outsnapped Tyler Lockett by a significant margin. It feels that way because it was the first time Chimere Dike actually produced as a wide receiver. But in the 2 weeks prior to this game, so the last 2 weeks under Brian Callahan, fair is fair, honest is honest. This was not a Mike McCoy change, the theme of this episode. Chimere Dike was already outsnapping Tyler Lockett by a significant margin in both week 5 and 6. You just didn't know it unless you paid attention to the snap counts because he didn't do anything as a receiver. But this was obviously like a collective decision, a Brian Callahan, a Nick Foltz, who's the receiver coach? Tyke Tolbert, I believe, is the receiver coach. Mike McCoy, like all these guys collectively believe that Tyler Lockett is washed. He ends up requesting his release, see if he can latch elsewhere. Ahead of the trade deadline, obviously 1-6, he'd love to latch on with a playoff contender. But Tyler Lockett, we hardly knew you. Thanks for the interception, fumble, touchdown. We'll never forget it. But obviously this is, positive for all parties involved. Essentially guarantees, even if Calvin Ridley comes back healthy, that Chim Dike is going to be playing a pretty large role here the rest of the way out.
Yeah, 2 things I have on this. Firstly, this is a bit of trivia from Chris Lawrence, our old Broadway buddy, in the group chat the other day. You know the answer to this, Justin, but I'll let our audience play along for a second. Who had more receiving yards as a Tennessee Titan, Randy Moss or Tyler Lockett?
I actually don't remember what Chris said. But I would guess Randy Moss.
Randy Moss had 80 receiving yards as a Titan. Tyler Lockett had 70. So if you think the Tyler Lockett era went well or that he was in any way good here, think again because I think we all remember how the Randy Moss era went. So that's my first thing to the washed point about how Tyler Lockett was. The other thing is I think a lot of fans are going to see this and think, oh, a slot receiver is no longer part of the team. That means it's finally time for the guy Titans fans have been waiting to see. I'm talking, of course, about Xavier Restrepo. It doesn't seem like this is the week for it because you mentioned Chim Dike. That's who this is really about. And I think this release probably materialized because, as you mentioned, Chim Dike has been outsnapping Lockett over the last 3 games, and they're probably going to keep doing that. And they either had a conversation with Lockett about it, or they didn't need to, and he can just sense the way it's going. And whichever one it was, he decided, I'm not even gonna get snaps here. This is the worst, the second worst, if not the worst team in the league. I'm 32. I want one more shot to go play on a team that doesn't completely suck. So let me out of here. And if they believe me, if they thought they could get something for him in a trade, even a conditional 7th, they would have tried to do it. So I don't know what the market for Tyler Lockett is even going to be. Good luck to him. I wish him the best. Like you said, I think he was a good mentor for the young receivers and for Cam Ward. But I think, it's been months. He's probably passed on as much as there is to pass on. Like, maybe there's always more to pass on, but you get my point. Like, the big things about learning the offense and getting in a rhythm with a quarterback and the rookies picking up habits from a veteran, like all that stuff, that's off-season type stuff. He was probably
most useful in training camp, right? Like, that's what you're referring to.
Yes. Get him out of the way. Healthy. Get him out of the way and get the young guns in the lineup. But I don't think, based on the comments we heard on Tuesday about Xavier Restrepo was like working really hard on special teams and Bones, like when they call up the receiver because like Mason Kinsey gets called up last week because Calvin Ridley's on the shelf, they're not calling him up. He did play some snaps on offense, but they're not calling him up for snaps on offense. They're calling him up to come play special teams. So Bones Fossil said that he prefers to give it to the guys with experience and the grinders, and not that Restrepo's not a grinder, but they're almost just sort of rewarding Mason Kinsey with some playing time for putting in like 5 years of absolute grinding at the lowest level. So whatever.
Yeah, well, to me, what's interesting is if Calvin really doesn't play this weekend, they've only got 3 healthy receivers in Io Manor, Van Jefferson, and DK. Now, I would expect if that's the case that they're going to dominate snaps. But you got to get a 4th guy. I mean, someone might get hurt. You're going to want to rotate a little bit. Like, they've got to get a 4th guy in there. And if Ridley doesn't play, that 4th guy is probably going to play a decent amount on offense. So we'll see what happens there. But on to the topic of the episode, what changed under Mike McCoy on offense? And again, small sample size first week. But there were a couple of things you and I paid close attention to or wanted to pay close attention to and dig up some of the data. Now, what are the things you could even look for?
Before we get too deep into the actual numbers, I just want to say, as an overarching sort of generalized statement, not as much change philosophically as I was expecting. And you were about to list those philosophical, what could it be? The play action rates, the personnel groupings, the motion rates, those kinds of things, right?
Correct. Well, where I will slightly disagree with you, I guess, is the one that I was really curious about was the play action rate. Now, shout out to our buddy Zach Lyons, who provided us with these numbers, and I believe is doing a very similar show maybe today on 104.5 The Zone. But the play action rate against the Patriots was 25.6%. Now, the reason I see that as a bit of a change was the last 2 times it was even close to that number was week 1 in Denver, where it was actually the highest of the season. And then they clearly decided, it's funny how quickly they got away from it, because that was the highest of the year. Week 2 against the Rams was by far the lowest of the year. So the Patriots at 25.6% is 3rd highest of the year. And what strikes me as interesting about that, not only is it 3rd highest, it was 10% higher than the week before, which was Brian Callahan's final game against the Las Vegas Raiders, and it was about 8.5% higher than it was against the Arizona Cardinals. I mean, I don't know if I'm putting too much stock in those numbers, but that's significant. When you're doing play action 8 to 10% frequently, more frequently than you were the weeks prior, then that's significant to me. And then what's even more significant to me, how did Cam Ward do under such circumstances, right? So they run more play action.
Yeah.
How does Cam Ward respond?
Hang on, before you get to that, I want to talk about the play action rate really quick, and then we'll talk about the effects of it, because yes, it's a change from where they were in previous weeks, but like you said, it's the 3rd highest of the season. It's not like they went totally crazy with it, and not that I want them to run play action on 50% of plays or whatever. And also, when you're losing and you only run 8 plays in the second half for minus yards until 7 minutes left in the game, those last 7 minutes when you're down 31-13, you're not going to run play action because no one's getting fooled by that at that point. So I get there's some like extenuating game circumstances that lead to these numbers. But when I look at like the top guys in the league right now, if you take the qualifier up so that you have to play a certain number of dropbacks, Daniel Jones leads the league in play action rate at 33.6%. And Daniel Jones has played like one of the best quarterbacks in the league this year. Now, granted, he's got maybe the best support system around him when it comes to the running game that's playing well, an offensive line that's protecting well, receivers that are making plays, a defense that's generating turnovers and getting stops and setting you up with good field position. All those things are working in his favor, which allows you to run play action more. I get it. But 33.6%, that's like the top of the league number. Cam Ward on the season is at 22.1%. So he was only at 25% in this game. That's only a 3% increase over his season average, which is good for 28th in the league out of 38 qualifying quarterbacks. I need more than that.
You know what, though? I'm sorry. If I'm going to cut in, you know where I'll disagree with you again, and I love when we disagree because we never do. I'm going the other way on this because, number one, first week under Mike McCoy. Right? So perhaps things are going to be gradually increasing, gradual changes. And we're going to get to the numbers. Spoiler alert, Cam Ward did really well in play action in this game. So
that's my point.
If you're increasing something and it worked out really well, the logical explanation, you hope the logical, arrival is that they're going to continue increasing it. If this it was 25.6%. You're wowed by Daniel Jones's 33%. If this goes up to 29%, which is only a 2.5% increase on what it was.
That's where I want it to be.
Well, that's a pretty big deal. My point is, I think you're on the right path to get there now. And on top of it, that's not all I was going to say. You brought up a good point that I didn't think of. They're losing most games by multiple scores, so perhaps this won't make a difference. But you're not going to play action in the fourth quarter when you're down 21. You look stupid. No one believes you're running the ball, and you're in hurry up, right? So it's dumb. So if they could play the occasional competitive game, and they take this sample size and say play action works really well, all of a sudden your 25.6% might be 28 or 29, which is starting to rub shoulders with Daniel Jones and the Colts rate. So how did Cam Ward do?
For reference, real quick, just to put it in people's minds, Dak Prescott, 8th in the league at 29.1%. Bo Nix, 7th at 29.2%. Jordan Love, 9th at 28.7%. So that's what I'm asking for, is like fringe top 10 area in terms of how the usage of play action. But let's talk, get us to Cam Ward's numbers when running play action in this game.
So Cam Ward attempted 8 play-action passes in this game. He completed all 8 of them, 8 for 8, for 115 yards and a touchdown. Of course, the gorgeous 38-yard touchdown to Shimere DK, which was, I think it was a deep crossing route, if I recall correctly now, occurred on play action. Cam Ward's passer rating, of course, 8 for 8 with a touchdown, 158.3, a perfect passer rating on play action, 14.4 yards per attempt. Now, again, a little bit skewed. You got a 38-yard touchdown in that sample size. Going to skew it a little bit, but
that's part of why you run play action. It's because you get big shot plays.
Opportunities. His completion percentage over expected, which is one of my favorite advanced stats. I look at it at, I don't know where Zach got it from, but I check next-gen stats every week for that number. Cam Ward's was 25.1% above expectation on the completion percentage for play action. Now, he was sacked twice. One of them was the fumble. So, I don't know that you could blame play action for that. He loses the handle on that ball. He also was sacked by Milton Williams on a play action pass. But to me, really encouraging sign that they did so well under play action. I'm going to be very disappointed if this number isn't at least around the same. It cannot go down against the Indianapolis Colts in Week 8. Again, circumstances will help determine, but the success that... I remember, they were asking Brian Callahan why they weren't running more play action because, the sample size was small. Cam Ward's numbers were already good in play action. Now they were better than they've ever been. This has to keep changing under Mike McCoy.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned like the circumstance, it has to go up. Like it might not go up if the Colts continue to do what the Colts do against the Titans defense that is really bad and could potentially be missing Jeffrey Simmons and Arden Key and Draymond Jones. Like we don't know the status of these guys yet. If all those guys are out and the Colts are able to just march up and down the field and it's 21-0 at the end of the first quarter, the play action's out the window, right? I mean, that's
right.
sort of a reality of the situation. But I do agree overall with the idea that they've got to keep running this play action as much as possible. And I think what was also different to me, by the way, I think he was 7 for 8 on play action. So I'm not sure if Zach had that wrong or if PFF has it wrong, but I just pulled it up here. Regardless, he was really, really good on play action in this game, so they need to keep doing it more. His completion percentage was 18.3% higher with play action than it was without play action. So his yards per attempt, 5.7. 5.7 is like his yards per attempt on the season. It was 5.7 yards per attempt higher on play action than it was without play action. And the biggest thing to me about it was the concepts they were running off play action are not concepts that we've seen very much of this season. I'm not going to say we haven't seen them at all, but in terms of the route combinations, we talk about the first play of the game. I've talked about it 3 straight podcasts now. First play of the game where you have the tight end running the little flat route underneath the defense coming from the backside and getting out into space. You have these deep crossing routes that it's not just the route being put on the play sheet and called in the game. It's also who's running the route. And we've talked about, you mentioned it at the top, Shimdike has been out snapping Tyler Lockett, but hasn't actually really done anything as a receiver because they've been drawing up these plays for him to catch the ball behind the line of scrimmage and say, go make a play. Like we're going to try to set this up like a punt return with blockers in front of you and you got to find the space and get through it. That's something he can do, but that's not his whole game, and that's not the only thing he does. His best thing he did in college was run these deep crossing routes. So you get 2 huge plays off play action in this game with him running a deep crossing route. The first one that Cam Ward threaded the needle in between multiple defenders, and then the very next play was the 38-yard touchdown. So that's what I'm encouraged by. The rate of play action obviously is important, but what they're actually running off play action is just as important to me. And this is where I saw the biggest change from Brian Callahan's offense to Mike McCoy, Bo Hardegree's new offense is, at least in the passing game, this is the biggest change I saw, is actually utilizing these receivers and letting them run the routes that they run best and putting that concept in the playbook or on the call sheet for the day and executing it. Bang, bang, bang. Huge improvement.
It's the execution, you're right, that sticks out. Now, I'm going to move us along to another change that to me is interesting, maybe intriguing is more the right word. I don't fully know what to make of it, and we'll probably keep this portion of the conversation a little shorter. Not as interesting as the play action stuff, but something to note. So we've got numbers, again, courtesy of Zach Lyons, that break up motion. We talked about pre-snap motion, how we're going to watch that. So all plays with motion, passing plays with motion, and running plays with motion. And this is really interesting. So all plays with motion, it was 3rd lowest of the season. It was 41.2% of offensive plays were run with motion. That was right in line with the last 2 games, essentially, Arizona and Las Vegas, which, by the way, were the 2 fewest plays with motion of the Titans season. So they didn't change a whole lot in the grand scheme of things when it comes to motion. But when you look at just passing plays with pre-snap motion, it was the 2nd highest rate of the season at 43.6%. Now, again, the Vegas and Arizona games were the 2 lowest. So significant increase from the last 2 Brian Callahan games to the first Mike McCoy game in pre-snap motion in relation to passing plays. I feel like this is such confusing language. I'm tripping over my words. I think you guys are getting me here. Really interesting that they really upped the percentage of pre-snap motion when passing the ball. But if you're a mathematician and you're really smart, the only way the motion can kind of be down with the passing motion being up is if it's way down on running, right? So when it comes to run plays with motion, listen to this. the lowest of the year at 33%. The second lowest of the year was 20% higher than that, at 53, and that was the Vegas game, by the way. They essentially said, we are not running the ball at all with pre-snap motion, but we are passing it more frequently than we do with motion. So make of this what you will. The only takeaway I have before I throw it to you, if you don't mind, is the only takeaway I have, and I don't necessarily disagree if this is the point of it. This team has really struggled with pre-snap penalties. I mean, look, you could argue, you could play devil's advocate against me and say that doesn't make sense, but when it comes to running the ball with motion, you're opening yourself up to like a legal formation. Got player A is not set. Like, there are so many things that can go wrong with pre-snap motion. Now, when you're one of the most penalized teams in the league, you're one of the sloppiest offenses in the league, it often does go wrong. So I don't blame them for almost wiping out the motion when it comes to running the ball. Back to basics. Mike McCoy talked about simplifying the offense. Sometimes that word, I think, is taken as offensive. Sometimes it just means you don't want guys to overthink. And I mean, it always means you don't want guys to overthink and you want them to play fast. And I think removing the pre-snap motion from the running game does that a little bit. Now, how you square that with the increase in the passing game, I don't know that I've got an answer for you, in all honesty. That's why I want to throw it to you.
I think there's multiple things at play here. It's not just about pre-snap penalties, although I agree that's part of it. It's also like when you're in motion before the snap on a run play, your target for your assignment, who you're supposed to block, can be changing, or if the defense is shifting while you're in motion and now two guys get confused on who they're like, it's about the execution as much, I think, about the penalties is like, let's just make it all more simple. As you said, because you're stationary before the snap, you can see if the defense makes a shift, you can communicate with your teammates on who's got who and what the blocking assignments are on a run play. I think that is a big part of it. And I do think there's a concerted effort to that. The other thing is they ran the ball 12 times this game. Tony Pollard had 6 carries, Tajay Spears had 5 carries, and Chimere Dike had a reverse. And there's definitely motion on the reverse. If you only run the ball 12 times, like, you almost don't know what the real plan was, because some of these handoffs are like, it's 3rd and 10 and we're going to run a draw, or we're in the 2-minute hurry up and we're going to hand it off here on a play that looks pre-snap like a pass play because of the game situation and the formation and whatever, and then you hand it off. There's no motion on that. So I think there's multiple factors at play. When you only run it 12 times, that means 33% motion. That means they had 4 running plays out of 12 where there was motion pre-snap or at the snap. So right. I do think that's a big part of it versus 34 passing attempts combined with 5 sacks. That's 39 dropbacks, and the percentage is higher there. I think you continue to do motion on pass plays because it helps your rookie quarterback identify coverages before the snap. The biggest issue I can see creeping up with this is if this tendency becomes more than a one-game tendency and opponents are like, motion, it's a pass.
Yeah, right, right. I was thinking that as well. That's definitely something they've got to pay attention to. You can't tip your hand quite as much. And there's no tipping your hand when you're debuting for the first time, right? Because no one knows what to expect. But as that sample size gets bigger on the Mike McCoy offense, that is something they got to pay attention to. I don't have a whole lot else. I think play action in motion. The last thing I'll say is I think you've got some numbers you maybe want to quickly run through on the 11 and 12 personnel groupings.
Honestly, no, because there was no change really. They ran a little bit more, like 1 or 2% more 13 personnel. But for the most part, the personnel groupings, which I think this might be another factor of the game getting away from them in the second half, because this is just my feel. It felt like a lot more 12 personnel at least in the first half. You got Corey Levin coming in as an extra O-lineman, playing fullback and even like getting out in a route on a play, which people are upset about, but like, I'm not upset about that. You're going to laugh about it in week 13 when Corey Levin catches a 2-yard touchdown after lining up as a fullback. So let's keep that in mind. I don't mind that. That's a good thing, because otherwise the conversation we literally just had, you bring Corey Levin on the field, you're tipping your hand. It's obviously a run. If you don't sometimes play action that and send Levin out into the flat, even just to distract like a flat defender, Like, whatever. Like, that doesn't bother me in any way, shape, or form. It's creative, and it's a good way to not tip your hand that when Levin's on the field, we're running it. Well, not every time, because we'll catch you sleeping if you assume we're running it just because Levin's on the field. So I don't have an issue with that. But yeah, the personnel stuff, I expected the numbers when I looked this up to come back with a lot more 12 personnel and 13 personnel. And it was more or less the same that it's been all season long. So that's kind of interesting. I do want to get last here as we wrap this show up into my more speculative thoughts about what's changing under Mike McCoy. And I mentioned this yesterday that every player has told us, the media and the fans, that everything's pretty much the same. And then Cedric Gray after 15 different players I hear say this over the course of a few days. And then Cedric Gray is interviewed after the game and says, yeah, everything's mostly the same. We're going to keep the changes internal. It's like, oh, so there are changes. You're just not going to tell them to us. And the number one thing that is changing under Mike McCoy, and this is not necessarily how the team operates, this is how he operates and how we in the media are going to operate. He doesn't tell us anything.
Yes.
He makes as much of an effort as possible to use as many words to give us as little information as he can. That's sort of a Mike Vrabel way. Like, we should be used to it from 6 years of Mike Vrabel literally telling us nothing ever. He is coach speak. He has perfected the art of coach speak. He's never going to tell us anything. He's going to give you what sounds like a thoughtful answer, but It's all just nonsense jargon, words, empty words that don't tell you anything. Every question he answers that's about a specific situation, he's going to turn it to, in general, this is how we think. And he's never going to answer your questions about a specific play. So that's number one, and that's going to extend to the players, and that's what I'm talking about, where every player is saying nothing's really changed. That's messaging coming down from the top to not tell the media what's changed or that anything has changed. So that's number one. Number two for me is sticking together. Not that Brian Callahan wasn't, emphasizing the idea of sticking together, but Mike McCoy, if you've listened to his press conferences, the number one phrase he has used or referred to is that we got to stick together. We're all in this together. It's on everyone. Almost every answer comes back to if there's a blame to be assigned or if there's an issue with something, it almost always comes back to, at the end of the day, it's on everyone and we got to stick together and we're all in this together. And I think that is actually, that's like the number one step in building a team culture. And I know Brian Callahan tried all that with his off-season activities, and I liked the idea. I didn't criticize it, and I'm not going to criticize it. It just didn't work because Callahan, it's not authentically Callahan, I don't think. Right. I think that's why the message failed to be received. Mike McCoy, it sounds authentic when he says it. I don't know why. Something about his presence. And I think that's going to be a big mentality change in the locker room, is that we are all in this together. And if we are able to survive this horrible season together and come out on the other side as a better team, it's going to feel more rewarding when we are competitive again next season or 2 seasons down the line.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I don't have a whole lot to add to it. I was going to make a note about the local beats where I did see some guys complaining that Mike McCoy says nothing. I get it. I'm not there, so maybe I don't care. But what I care about is winning football games.
Right.
Brian Callahan was so cool to talk to. What's not cool is 4-19, right? Like, I don't give a damn about what a coach said. Mike Vrabel said nothing, but he won a lot of football games. Which one matters more, right? So, for me, it's almost it's a big change certainly for the guys who are there, but nothing matters more than on-field performance. And Brian Callahan simply wasn't getting it done. That'll do it for this episode of the Music City Audible podcast. Condensed, but I think really good episode. I really enjoyed the data on play action. The motion stuff is really interesting as well. You can start to see the changes Mike McCoy is making. And if I don't want to say, I'll get a joke, you have to squint. But if you look at it, you can see where it benefited Cam Ward, right? Like the success that he had in play action, no doubt about it. So we're going to keep monitoring this as we move forward, the play action rates. How does Cam Ward grow or not grow as a quarterback under Mike McCoy in this offense? We got, 9 games left, I believe. So long way to go. We're going to keep watching it. Until tomorrow, we'll be back.
10 games left.
10 games left. You're right. Sorry, they're 1-6. I wish there was 9. I wish there was 2. 10 games left in the Titans season.
I wish it was draft season, and that's what we were talking about. But hey, it is what it is.
Can't wait for draft season. That's typical for a Tennessee Titans fan. We'll be back tomorrow. I think we're talking some trade deadline stuff. It's just over a week away. It's going to fly. So we'll get into that tomorrow. Then we'll have
2 weeks from today. But yeah, I agree.
2 weeks today still? Is it 2 weeks today?
2 weeks from today.
2 weeks
November
from
4th.
today. So look at Graver. Friggin' always on my case. 13 days as of tomorrow when we get into the episode. Until then, y'all stay safe out there and tighten up.
A Broadway sports media production.